We will actually work example 4 two different ways. In method 1 here, we will start with the left-hand side, cosecant x minus the sine of x. And we will try to make this into the right-hand side. What I notice is that cosecant x is the same as 1 over sine x. And so I'm going to start just by changing this to be 1 over sine of x minus the sine of x. What then I am allowed to do is notice that we have two fractions and we can find a common denominator. The common denominator here is just going to be sine of x times 1 or just sine of x. Our first fraction already has that exact denominator, and so I just need to bring down the 1. Our second fraction is missing the sine of x in the denominator, which means I need to multiply it by sine of x down there, and in order to keep the problem the same, I need to also multiply by sine of x in the numerator. When I then multiply sine x times sine x, that's going to give me minus sine squared of x. What I notice then is that we have a Pythagorean identity rearrangement in the numerator. And so we can write 1 minus sine squared of x as cosine squared of x divided by sine of x. Now, if you look at our target, we're trying to make this look like the right-hand side. We're getting close because now we have our cosine of x. What we need now is a cotangent of x. Well, I know that cotangent of x is cosine over sine. So I've got my over sine and I've got the other cosine that I need up there in the numerator. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to write this as cosine x times cosine x divided by sine of x. Notice that this is the same thing because cosine squared of x just means cosine of x times itself. And so now what we're going to be able to do is carry down one of those cosine of x's and then pair the other one with our denominator sine of x. And the reason that we're able to do that is because we have multiplication in the numerator. And so cosine of x over sine of x is going to give me cotangent of x there so that we end up at our right-hand side. For method 2, we will start with the right-hand side and make that look like the left-hand side. And so starting with cosine of x times cotangent of x. And you would think that this might look similar to just, using method 1 and going in reverse, but you don't always necessarily see it that way, as I'm going to show you here. What I recognize first is that if I'm going to try to make this look like the left-hand side has a sine of x and a 1 over sine of x in it. And so I need to get everything here to be in terms of sine and cosine. And so rewriting down the cosine of x and then changing cotangent of x to be cosine of x over sine of x will get the job done. And so what we're going to have then, if we just multiply, is cosine squared of x over sine of x. Okay, so far this is looking pretty similar. The other thing that I recognize is that I'm going to have a sine of x in the problem, and so I'm going to use my rearranged version of my Pythagorean identity in the numerator. And so this will be 1 minus the sine squared of x divided by sine of x. Okay, from there, we're going to split through the numerator. Notice that we have a single term in the denominator, and so that means that we can split this through the numerator and say that this is 1 over sine of x minus sine squared of x divided by sine of x. Okay, then from there, we see that 1 over sine of x using a reciprocal identity is cosecant of x. And on the second fraction, this is going to reduce because we have sine x in the denominator that will cancel with 1 of the sine x's in the numerator so that we get minus sine of x. And notice that that is exactly what our left-hand side said. And so in this particular problem, you could have either started with the left-hand side, made it look like the right-hand side, or vice versa, starting with the right-hand side and making it look like the left-hand side. But notice that I did not work on both sides simultaneously. I picked a side and then made it look like the other side.